Again, good afternoon, and Mayor Casale, thank you for hosting. Beautiful place, the city of Beacon, a city on the move. And first I would like to welcome all the honorees, the press that is here, and of course the public that came out in support of our mighty Hudson River. I also like to acknowledge some of the people in the audience. I see Karen Mejia from the City of Newburgh. I see Deputy Supervisor Lanzetta, Cindy Lanzetta from the Town of Marlborough. I see George Mansfield. I see Jerry Landisi. I see Howard from Marlborough. Quite a few people. Oh, of course, Bob Lacola from Fishkill. And if any member, by the way, of the media or rather any organization is here present and I'm not acknowledging you, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. And Alan Keenan, of course, and Beacon Soup Club.
And,
excellent.
Hudson Highlands Land.
Hudson Highlands. Well, of course, I think we're going to be talking about you. Thank you all very much for being here. And of course, I also like to acknowledge members of the Bicking of Scenic Hudson, as we said. Michelle Smith, the Executive Director of the Hudson Highlands Land Trust. And of course, Bob Lacola, who's already been acknowledged. Now, it has been said, and many people believe, that the insignia of the state of New York, right here, was imagined by a nearby vantage point with the scene of two tall ships beyond the Hudson, stretching out and up into Mount Beacon at a sunrise, rather. It's a beautiful scenery, and but I couldn't possibly imagine what we see right now. You can imagine really on our logo how horrible it would look if we saw nothing but barges and oil tankers parked here in our insignia. That's not something that I could possibly imagine. So it's a horrible scene. So our purpose here today really is to publicly oppose the Coast Guard's proposal to establish anchorage grounds along the mighty Hudson River, America's heritage river, and create parking lots and basically storage facilities for oil and gas, waiting for the price of this dirty energy to go up. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that's what that is all about. And our federal government must be insensitive, really insensitive, and clueless as to the environmental and economic impact this would have on us, on our local economy, our tourist economy, and our efforts to really clean up the Hudson River. This is the river that actually shaped Manhattan and helped to build the Empire State. And we are currently investing millions of dollars to mitigate abuse and make the river a source for jobs and economic growth by creating waterfront access for every community along the banks of the Hudson. This river is a very special gift to our state and to our nation. And the federal government should be helping us, not impeding in our efforts up and make this river useful for us and for future generations. So many communities depend on the Hudson River, by the way, for their drinking water. Just ask the mayor of the City of Poughkeepsie and the town of Highland where they get the water. Or just ask Garen Mahiga the importance of clean water for the City of Newburgh. Now, every community I represent has access to the Hudson. That is what brings us all here together. And on a personal level, I want you to know that this river holds a special place in my heart. It is really the first thing I observed before landing a Kennedy Airport with my mom nearly 50 years ago, how the time passes. And it was the first thing I observed from the plane as we diverted over Kennedy and over the Hudson. And when I lays out on this magnificent river, I was in awe by its size and by the flow of this body of water. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said this story before, but I think it's repeat worthy. I could not wait to go and write to my father and tell him about that I had discovered the promised land. Now, someone coming from a small island where there were no trees and where the water just trickled here and there, this was a big thing for me. In fact, I remember telling my writing to my father and saying, how I wish that I could send him a little stream over to the island from right here at the Hudson. You know, it was years later when I traveled up the Hudson and I landed at New York Military Academy, when I began to study and understand this magnificent Hudson River and the abuse that he had suffered. And that's why we're here today. The efforts to save the Hudson River has been hard fought over the years by Riverkeeper. By the way, Kate is here. Yeah. Ironically, John Cronin, one of the founders, tells a story that on his first day on the job, so to speak, he witnessed a tanker discharging right here in the Hudson. The Gulf. I could not imagine. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker, Kate Hudson, Director of Cross Watershed Initiatives, Riverkeeper, will address us first. Thank you.
Yes, I have to raise my voice. Thank you so much for organizing this important opportunity to speak, for all of us to speak in support of the river that we all care about so much. I am going to focus my remarks on information, because I think information is key to our making the right decisions about how to take action. And there is much confusion, much misinformation, much disinformation concerning this very consequential issue. So I want to take a moment to try to get the facts out about who has proposed this, why, and why it is such a concern for all of us, so we can be clear and forceful and speak with one voice about what needs to be done in order to protect our river and our communities. So, what is being proposed, and by whom? What happened is that in January 2016, commercial shipping organizations, including the tug and barge operators, the Hudson River Pilots Association, and American Waterways operators, submitted a written request to the Coast Guard that the number of official anchorage grounds for large commercial vessels in the Hudson River be expanded from the current 2 in Yonkers and Hyde Park to 43 berths in 10 locations, opening up 2,400 acres of new anchorages in the Hudson River, in some of the most ecologically sensitive areas of the river. And 42 of those 43 berths would be characterized as long-term, that vessels could stay at for multiple days. Thus, this is not, as vessel operators have tried to characterize it, nothing new. We've been doing this forever. This would represent a huge increase in the anchoring of commercial vessels in the Hudson between the George Washington Bridge and Albany, turning our river into a parking lot for large barges and vessels while they wait for dock space available. So why did the commercial shipping organizations make this request to the Coast Guard? Until late fall of 2015, northbound tugs and barges frequently anchored off of Port Ewan, just south of the Roundout Creek. Riverkeeper received many complaints from residents of communities on both sides of the river, Esopus, Port Ewan, Rhine Cliff, and we referred them to Captain Day for Coast Guard, Sector D. Day ultimately, on the basis of those complaints, notified vessel operators that where they were anchoring was not an authorized, federally designated anchorage ground, and they had to cease using it immediately. In response, the shipping organizations submitted their vastly increased anchorage request to the Coast Guard in January 2016. In their letter, in their January 2016 letter, these commercial shipping organizations made it very clear why they were doing this. They specifically referred to the vast increase in the transport of Bakken crude oil on the Hudson since the beginning of 2012. Essentially, the industry emphasized that trade in crude oil on the Hudson will increase significantly over the next few years with the lifting of the ban on American exports. And the federally designated anchorages are key to supporting that trade. Since that letter was written and submitted to the Coast Guard, the shipping industry has changed their tune a bit and started to talk about safety. But this is very clear from their letter what their purpose is. So why is it that we are faced with all this transport on the Hudson River, which literally did not exist prior to 2011? Refined oil has been coming up the river forever and supplying all of our communities with heating oil and gas. Raw crude had not been coming down the river until 2011. What happened? North Dakota, the Bakken shale, and over the next 4 years, between 2012 and 2016, up to 25% of the fracked crude oil coming out of the Bakken shale fields is going through Albany. 25%, a quarter of the entire output of that region. And what doesn't come down on the trains is coming down on vessels and barges. And the permits, and in addition to that, this is a fossil fuel commercialization of the Hudson River that we have never seen before. In addition, permits are also being sought to allow the companies loading this oil in the Port of Albany and Buckeye to load tar sands oil, sinking tar sands oil, on these very same barges. These permits are being fought by Riverkeeper and others in the ports right now. This oil and the increase that obviously these anchorage designations would allow to happen massively, exponentially increases the risk of spills in the Hudson of oil. It is the accident waiting to happen, and it is the accident that the river will not be able to recover from. Professional responders to oil spills estimate that a successful recovery to a spill in a tidal river like the Hudson would be able to recover maybe 15 to 20% of the oil spill. When it comes to heavy crude, to tar sands, 5 to 10% recovery would be a successful spill. The rest will remain in the river. So why do we need the increase in crude oil shipping that this proposal facilitates? and who will benefit? As I mentioned, the shippers have said, oh no, this is all about safety. What if, it's foggy or there's ice, you'll be able to stop. This is a problem that doesn't need to be fixed, because any time that a commercial vessel wants emergency anchoring privileges, all they have to do is ask the Coast Guard, and it will be granted. They also say that the 3 anchorages in the Kingston hub between Port Ewan and the Round Out Creek are essential because the upper river should be navigated only during daylight. The barges anchored near Kingston weren't waiting for daylight. They were waiting for dock space in Albany. And loaded barges routinely travel south from the Port of Albany at night. Don't we need gas and home heating oil? I think we've seen that those products have been shipped from refineries up to Albany for decades. That won't change. That's not the issue. The barges that have been anchoring in the Hudson since 2012 are carrying crude oil down to refineries in Philadelphia and New Jersey. It is more often than not they are anchoring because the loading terminals in Albany are on capacity. It's disingenuous and dishonest to raise the specter of, oh, you're not going to have enough heating oil or gasoline if you don't approve these anchorages. We are faced with a situation where what has been traveling down the Hudson River since 2011 was limited by the capacity of coastal refineries in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Now that the United States has lifted the crude oil ban, industry predicts that we will see enormous increase in volumes transported on the Hudson. That's why they're asking for the anchorages. Now, global market forces and the permits that New York State DEC issues are the only limit to how much oil we can see. There are some that claim that these products need to be transported by water because having large transport of oil will prevent the construction of a pipeline. The pipeline industry says if they have a pipeline, we won't need barges. The rail industry says it's the safest means of transport of all. They're all wrong. Having barges won't prevent pipelines, having pipelines won't prevent barges, and transport by rail won't prevent either of the others. None of these industries has made an agreement saying if you move the oil, we'll back out of the business. And the refiners and owners of the oil say we use all of the above strategy any way we can get it to market. So, in light of that, I am going to defer to others in terms of discussing very specific impacts, but I do want to reiterate that the cargo of greatest risk to the Hudson is petroleum. And the risk of a spill, already a serious threat, will rise even further if new anchorages are granted. And what else could we expect if new anchorages are granted? In other parts of the country, crude oil is being stored in vessels until prices rebound. We could become a storage facility, basically, until that happens. Or maybe we will see a request for a proportional increase, if the anchorages are granted, in the Port of Albany to eliminate the gridlock in the port facility and movement of additional vessels. They are already applying to expand the Port of Albany. And as you have mentioned, we have 100,000 residents in the Mid-Hudson Valley that depend on their drinking water from the Hudson, which would be put at serious risk in the tidal river if there were a spill anywhere in the vicinity. And I have to because my boat captain tells me if I leave without mentioning the sturgeon, he will be very upset with me. The sturgeon were here first. Several of the proposed anchorages are areas relied upon by both the Atlantic and shore-nosed sturgeon, both of which are on the endangered species list. The anchors and anchor chains scar and disturb the river bottom where the sturgeon spawn, feed, and rest. And scientists using side-scan sonar have been able to document this scarring and the fact that it does not disappear, even when the anchorages, the unauthorized anchorages off of Port Ewan were terminated in the fall of 2015. So we must, as part of all of our advocacy, insist that research be done to determine whether or not the sturgeon are going to be injured by this anchorage proposal. I want to make one additional point, and then I promise I'll stop. Something that I think is not known by a lot of people, and it's not specific to this anchorage proposal. Anchorages proposals generally are not subject to the requirement for a federal environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act. We must insist in our comments to the Coast Guard that a full and comprehensive environmental review will be conducted before any decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate, for that comprehensive explanation of the risks involved in this really crazy proposal, which is unacceptable, I think, to every one of us here today. Now, the efforts to save the Hudson River has been fought by people like Clara Sowers, who founded Scenic Hudson in an effort to prevent a large industrial power plant from carving out Storm King Mountain, rather. I want to thank Scenic Hudson for allowing us to enjoy this today. And now I would like to have Andy Beacon, Director of Public Policy for Scenic Hudson, come up and speak to us for a few minutes. Thank you.
We really appreciate your leadership and pulling us all together here to find common ground in what is an issue which is really presenting grave risks to the region. I want to welcome everyone first to Scenic Hudson's Long Dock Park. Those of you who have lived in Beacon for some time remember a day when this was a contaminated brownfield, an old industrial site, which was polluted, that the public could not come to and could not enjoy, and was really kept away from. That story of riverfront being kind of the backdoor to the communities along its banks is one that we see echoed up and down the entire estuary from Manhattan to Albany and the Federal Dam at Troy. However, we're very fortunate today that through some great collaborations with the community groups and other concerned individuals, that we have been able to transform our waterfronts into places that are desirable, where people want to be, they want to spend time, and increasingly we are seeing them be drivers of economic development. They are becoming a focal place where people congregate, events are happening, tourism is huge in the region, it is perhaps our largest single economic engine, and people are coming to the waterfront like never before. The river is also attracting new residents and businesses who want to come to the Hudson Valley for the incredible quality of life that we have. All of that is really in jeopardy and potentially at risk if the proposal to increase the anchorages for large commercial vessels in the river increases. As you heard earlier, they are proposing an increase to 43 separate berths at 10 different locations, from Yonkers up to Rhinebeck and Kingston. This is would be an incredible transformation of the river, and it would forever change the way people relate to and experience the waterfront, whether it's a beautiful outdoor park like this here in Beacon, or whether it's an urban waterfront where people are enjoying the river differently but enjoying it all the same in places like Kingston or Newburgh. The river also has a lot of incredible natural habitats that are at risk. Tidal wetlands are a unique resource that the region has. And just south of here in Cold Spring, at Foundry Cove, there is one of these resources that is serving as a great breeding ground for fish and many other plants and animals. All of this could also be at risk. Let's not forget that the river flows both ways. It is an estuary, and in a matter of minutes, minutes, in less than an hour, any spill of crude oil could very quickly damage these natural areas. But bringing it back to the kind of built environment, how people are relating to the river, we have invested millions and millions of dollars throughout the region to transform the riverfront from its industrial past, where it was our back door, into its future, where it is our front door, where people like to be. The barges that have been proposed are essentially floating industrial facilities. If they're anchored here at night, they need to have deck lights. That requires generators. There will be significant light and noise pollution, as well as air pollution from using those generators. So our enjoyment of the river today, a nice peaceful view, fresh air, a place to come together with friends to enjoy the afternoon, would forever be transformed because of these impacts. Kate mentioned the impacts on endangered species. This is absolutely critical to be thinking about the sturgeon. That's right, I wore the hat today. They are federally listed species. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is actually in the process of designating that in the Hudson River for these animals and others. That was something which unfortunately was not taken into consideration in the advanced rule which we saw from the Coast Guard. So as part of a full environmental review, we are also insisting that the Coast Guard coordinate with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to understand the full impact of this proposal on people and on the endangered species that live. So, thank you very much for your leadership.
For all the great work that City Council does for us here in the Hudson Valley. Now, most affectionately, it's been a lifelong battle by people like me and Toshish Seeger, founders of the Hudson River Clearwater. Bears the name just a few hundred yards north of us. And so at this point, I would like to have Dave interim executive director, Hudson River Clearwater, to come up and address the crowd.
Thanks. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Andy for really articulating the issue exceptionally well. And when I first heard about this proposal that the Coast Guard was looking for public comments on this, I asked myself, let me get this straight. You want to ask people who live in the Hudson Valley, arguably the birthplace of the modern environmental movement, you want to ask possibly the most environmentally literate population in the country, you want to ask them if they think it's a good idea to park barges on the river that they love so much. Good luck with that. Be careful what you ask for, because you're going to get more comments, I think, than you bargained for. When I think of the Hudson River, I think of things like illegals, and I think of striped bass and sturgeon, and I think of kayaking, and I think of coming to lovely parks like this one and just enjoying the view. And I think many of us think that too, and that's that legacy that was built by people like Franny Reese and Pete Seeger and Bob Boyle and many others, many of folks who are probably in the audience right now. That legacy is strong here, and I think that legacy is at stake with this kind of a proposal. And I can't imagine a poorer use of Hudson River surface area than having it be littered with barges. It's unimaginable to me, and I can't envision that could be even a possibility. And I suspect that if somehow this proposal were to be approved, it would be very difficult to get it overturned. Once an area is designated, I suspect it would be really hard to turn it back. So we can't live it. And I am confident, based on what I know of the communities that live in Hudson, that we will make sure that this doesn't happen. So thank you all for coming in. I really appreciate everybody's support through the years.
I think that something like this is happening to us right here, the heart and soul of the Department of Justice. In thinking about putting this event together, I felt that it was important for me to organize this press conference because I'm probably the only Assemblyman person that represents an entire community that actually cities and towns that have access to the Hudson River. And I know without a doubt that they all are here because they are part of this crazy plan. There's just too much at stake. Local economy and to our connection to the Hudson River. So at this point, what I'd like to do, and I know we have to change things around a little bit, I'd like to ask our Lanzetta supervisor of the Town of Marlborough to come up and express his thoughts. By the way, our Lanzetta is the man that basically got me involved in the public service, and he asked me to join him one day down by the train station, a beautiful project that he's been working on for many years now. I think it's been about 7 or 8 years, 10 years. All right, I was a little bit late, but he invited me to go down there. I saw the project, I fell in love with it, and I began to work with him and bringing it back to life and restoring it. And of course, this is also the place where the Coast Guard is proposing to have not one, but 2 floating barges. Al?
Thank you, everybody. First of all, thank you to my good friend Frank Skartados, and thank you to the Mayor of Beacon for allowing us to be here. It's a beautiful spot. Someday, I think we're down at our river, down at our landing, we're going to have something similar. So, thank you very much. What a beautiful place. And what a beautiful river, and a beautiful day we have, right? First of all, I'd like to just briefly acknowledge 2 gentlemen that are out in the audience. They're my Councilman Howard Baker and Councilman Alan Koenig. Very supportive of not going through with this really ridiculous, I think, personally. Piece of, you say it, Frank, being politically correct.
Politically correct.
Garbage?
I think it's malarkey.
So I just want to say the Marlborough Town Board has requested I prepare a comment on proposed Anchorage sites for the hamlet of Marlborough and Milton. In the last 10 years, the Town of Marlborough has received over $1.5 million of grants. In addition to over $500,000 of private funding monies and countless hours of volunteerism to develop our waterfront area along the Hudson River. Most recently, we received a $135,000 grant from the state to do a local waterfront revitalization plan for our community. The reason we have been so successful in securing taxpayers' money is the shared agreement that our economic, cultural, and recreational future is tied to our access to the Hudson River. The barges and commercial traffic blocking our views and impeding access to the future use of the deep water docks at Milton Landing Park is unacceptable. The taxpayers of New York have already made a huge investment in the town of Marlborough, and the vision for our community's waterfront should be acknowledged and respected. Sincerely, Al Lanzetta. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all, and now I need to let our mayor of Beacon, like I said, a city on the move, come up and make his remarks. I thank you very much for your hospitality, sir.
First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone here to this beautiful park that Scenic Hudson has built in our city, and I'd like to thank our Assemblyman for being a leader in this fight to stop this Anchorage from happening. When I heard about it, the first thing I did was write a letter to the Coast Guard to make sure that if they were going to have public hearings, that they didn't have them where nobody wanted to drive to. So we wrote them a letter and say, you know, we want one in our area, and you're welcome to have it in the City of Beacon, and we'll find a hall big enough for everybody to come. I got a response, and they said they got our letter, and they'll take that into consideration. The second thing I did is talk to our council, and what we did at our Monday night meeting, just this past Monday, we passed a resolution calling upon the Coast Guard to hold a public meeting in the City of Beacon to discuss the proposed new anchorage ground in the Hudson River between Beacon and Newburgh. And before I read it, I just want people to know, you look out here, and I grew up here all my life. So I've seen what this was. There was a big salt storage place here that they loaded salt off freight onto the ground into trucks to take it everywhere around. Right over there where the red barn was, it was a junkyard. Further down was the city dump. My question to everybody here, what would Pete be saying right now if he was with us? Pete's the one that transformed that city dump, which we call now the Pete Itochi Riverfront Park, into a beautiful park. Pete's the one that started Clearwater to help clean up the river. And I'd like to thank all the organizations that are here, Riverkeeper, Clearwater, Scenic Hudson, and the Sloop Club for the work they do to make sure that the river stays clean and fight anybody that wants to try to impede it. This river we couldn't swim in because it was damaged. Right now, the Sloop Club and the river pool has a little pool over there that thousands of people come swim every year in free of charge to get wet and get in the water. They're looking to build a bigger pool. This kayak center, recreation that we have, is busy all the time. People enjoying the river. And then the scenic views that you see over here. So these anchorages would really demoralize what was built here by the people that had foresight. And I'd like to give credit to former Mayor Clara Lou Gould and Steve Gold for their leadership through all this. I'm the one that's reaping the benefits, so I'd like to thank them. The resolution reads, whereas the United States Coast Guard is considering establishing new anchorage grounds in the Hudson River from Yonkers, New York to Kingston, New York, as intended with heat request that anchorage grounds may improve navigation safety along extended portion of the river, which currently has no anchorage grounds. And whereas the Coast Guard, while considering such role, is seeking comments and information about the operational needs for new anchorage grounds, what form possible regulations should take. Whereas the Coast Guard's notice advises that considering proposing an anchorage ground covering approximately 445 acres for up to 5 vessels to be established as a Newburgh anchorage ground. Just so everybody knows, Town of Newburgh is dead center, deep channel of the river. It's not going to be over by Newburgh. It's going to be in the middle of the river, closer to our side of the river. Whereas a map is attached to this resolution with statistics, the proposed Hudson River anchorage proposal in such anchorage area would be opposite Dennings Point and Scenic Hudson's Long Dock Park. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Beacon hereby requests that the proposed Newburgh anchorage ground, A, is closer to Beacon and to Newburgh, is the second largest proposed anchorage ground, C, is directly opposite Beacon's waterfront, D, will have a direct impact on the city's viewshed, quality of life, and impact its tourist economy, that the Coast Guard hold a public meeting to be hosted by the City of Beacon and held at City Hall for the purpose of the Coast Guard to explain the proposal and to receive public comment. And be it further resolved, the City Council requests further information to be provided, including but not limited to the following. A, whether in considering adopting proposed rules permitting new anchorage grounds will the Coast Guard comply with the National Environmental Protection Act. B, on average, how many ships per year would use such anchorage positions? C, on average, how long would a ship be anchored? D, what are the potential impacts associated with the noise from the ship? E, what are the potential impacts associated with the lights on the ship? F, what are the potential impacts to the viewshed when considered from all points in the City of Beacon? G, what is the potential economic impact on tourism in the City of Beacon from locating such anchorage points directly opposite the city's waterfront? H, are the proposed anchorage points consistent with the City of Beacon's local waterfront revitalization plan? I, if there's going to be further consideration of these proposed anchorage ground. The Coast Guard correctly labeled such grounds by reference to the municipality that borders both sides of the Hudson River, such that the proposed Newburgh anchorage ground will be labeled as Beacon Newburgh anchorage ground, so the public is more fully informed. J. Details as to the height, length, and width of the ships that would be expected to anchor at the Beacon Newburgh anchorage ground. K. Types of materials that the ships would be hauling that would potentially anchor at the Beacon Newburgh anchorage ground. So we're really asking them to lay everything out so the public will really know what's going on and to have meetings here locally, because a lot of times officials have meetings, they have them in New York, Albany, and people cannot get to them. And yeah, they say they'll take written comments, which we will put on, sent to them. But it's nothing like being in person, in mass, to get what you want. So I want to thank everyone that's here today, especially all the other mayors and supervisors. I got Bob Lacola, the Town of Fishkill supervisor. And you know, it's funny because the land under the river, right up to the banks of our land, is the Town of Fishkill. So it affects them, and people don't even realize that. And I believe their land runs from the Newburgh Beacon Bridge all the way down to Dennick's Point under the river. So that's part of the Town of Fishkill. So I want to thank all of my local officials that are supporting this and everybody that came today. Thank you.
Thank you. Keeping the city of Beacon moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We had to make some changes again, and I think right now the Beacon Snoop Club will entertain us with a musical rendition by Ken Miller and Lydia Davis.
Thank you.
Well, Pete can't be here, but he's here in spirit. So. Oil barges parking on the river, right in the middle of a street. A short time, baby, forever. Who knows what is their scheme? Who knows the profit from the oil? They won't tell us or say.
They won't say.
Just follow the money, follow the money. They want us to move away. Just follow the money, follow the money. They want you to look away. All profits driven on the river. All profits cut and dry. They won't let it happen. If you let it happen, then all our good work will die. Those tankers out there partying,
Take it pocket, wait for the profits to get high.
people on this river, the people on this river, stand up for once in your life.
All you people,
The people on this river, the people on this river, stand up for once in your life.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call a good friend of mine from the town of Newburgh, Gil Piaquadio, to come up and make a few remarks. By the way, the town of Newburgh, if you don't know, take time to go and take a look at this beautiful town that is at the crossroads of 84 and 87, and it's dotted by myriad of little streams and ponds and bodies of water from where the town actually gets its water, and it is a place that we are very much like to protect. This is the reason why I fought so hard in the Assembly a few days before the session was over to oppose the Pilgrim pipeline, which, by the way, was proposing to send 2 spurs going right through the town of Newburgh, and guess where? Right into the Hudson River. Unacceptable. My friend.
Thank you. And I want to thank Assemblyman Skartados for organizing this event, opposing the concept of anchoring 43 barges in 7 locations between Yonkers and Kingston, loaded with fuel or ethanol in the Hudson River.
As elected officials, we must protect the quality of life for our residents and everyone who passes through the area. And as has been said before, and I must ask myself, is this a method of storing fuel until prices rise before unloading that is currently being done in other parts of the world? The Hudson River is a natural beauty for the entire area. The river serves as a backdrop to many restaurants, businesses, not to mention recreational activities which generate tourism, all of which are at risk with this plan. I believe this concept would bring tears to the eyes of Henry Hudson, for whom the river is named. Hudson described the river in 1609 while sailing for the Dutch East India Company as one of natural beauty. It seems this plan of anchoring barges is a transformation to an industrial canal. Consider the disaster of a spill and no real form of containment in such an open-flowing river. Consider the emissions from vessels. Consider the visual impact. On September 6th, my board will pass a resolution sent to the Coast Guard opposing this plan, and we cannot join together enough to ask the Coast Guard to really not consider this very important plan. And I want to thank everyone here today, and I want to thank Frank again. Frank,
Thank you, Gil. Thank you. Now I'd like to call on, I believe it's Judy Kennedy. She's in the house. Thank you, Judy. And I know you just had a press conference with the State Attorney General concerning some funding for the City of Newburgh. And of course, as you all know, the City of Newburgh has been going through some difficult times with its water after the state and the federal government just basically contaminated its water. So we are holding them accountable in cleaning it up and restoring it and making sure that health issues are addressed as well. So Judy Kennedy, thank you for being here. Please, the mic is yours.
Anyway, so water seems to be a big deal here. Water in the City of Newburgh, drinking water, everywhere you look, it's water. The staff of life, the thing that we all depend on, the thing that we are absolutely, the very thing that floats in our veins. And now, this is the vein through the state of New York, a primary vein, an artery, that for whatever reason, the Coast Guard, and I won't put words in anybody's mouth, decided that they were just going to start anchoring these large commercial ships. And as has been stated here by so many today, that for decades now we've been cleaning up the river, we've been cleaning up the ocean, we've been making it a habitable, hospitable place for people to enjoy, for our cities to come back, and for us to be able to breathe and play and enjoy our environment. And now there's this subtle initiative, we're just going to anchor some boats along the river. This subtle idea, and I want to thank Assemblyman Skartados, first of all, for setting up this meeting today to have this discussion. But I also want to thank Randy, my friend Randy over here. I want to borrow that resolution, and we can just kind of, leverage some of that language. And I would be glad to send a copy to our needs in Newburgh, because the City of Beacon and the City of Newburgh share this artery. We share this artery directly across each other. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But Poughkeepsie's just up the road, and Kingston's just up the road, and Rhinebeck's just up the road. And what we do one, we do the other. We're all in this together. And so standing together, all of us, our congressmen, and by the way, our Assemblyman, our Congressman Maloney was over at the other press conference with me, and he stands with us on this as well, that we cannot love the questions that have been laid out here. We do need the public hearings. We need the public hearings in all of these places. They need to be here where they're going to do the Anchorage, not some other place where you can't have input. So I am so happy to be here and be able to be here, by the way. I thank my friend Steve Gold for calling me. Over here is Councilwoman Mahia, and is a great friend of the City of Newburgh, and so many people that are all standing together. Because if we don't, we're going to get run over. So we're not going to get run over with big ships.
Absolutely not. Are we?
No, we're not going to get run over with big ships. So let's figure out how we're going to contain this situation, and let's also make sure that we're all of one accord, and that we, all of us, use this resolution as a template. So if the City of Beacon sends one in, they've done it. We send one in. The Town of Newburgh, the City of Poughkeepsie, the Town of Poughkeepsie, Kingston, we all send it in. We're of one accord. They're going to hear a loud voice. And I just thank all of you for standing up with your voice, adding to the loud voice, and making sure that we take care of this absolute stellar piece of land, water, resource, very staff of life. So thank you, Lord. Thank you all.
Thank you, Judy, for all you do and all the work that you're doing, by the way, in the City of Newburgh, another city on the move, where we've got to make sure that the federal government and the state government come together to do the right thing when it comes to its water supply. So now, last but not least, my good friend Rob Rolison from the City of Poughkeepsie. And by the way, Rob Rolison is going to also be representing Supervisor Hansut. Could not be with us today, but previously it was mentioned about the tourism and the tourist economy and how important this is to our state, or rather to our local economy here in the Hudson Valley. Statewide we're looking at about $4.7 billion industry, and one of those projects that we worked so hard to connect, by the way, Dutchess County with Hollister County was the walkway over the Hudson, which now benefits both the City of Poughkeepsie and, of course, Highland. And my good friend Rob, all about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you very much. I was told I was batting cleanup, and then I noticed that the City of Poughkeepsie water taxi came down. We bought that actually with money we got from Frank. I didn't tell you that. And I just went in my head. It's not a City of Poughkeepsie water taxi. We don't have money to buy that. Judy, you probably can get one, and I want to say it is really great to see you here today, Mayor Kennedy. And to my other good friend Randy Casale, thank you for having us here in the City of Hudson, being able to have this spot in the City of Beacon. I had not been here at this actual point. I had been over there with the 5th grade class from Krieger Elementary a few months ago. Myself and Mark Molinaro took the train down, and they spent half a day here with Scenic Hudson learning about the river. And I see those kids all the time, and we're still talking about that trip on that day and how important the river is. And we're getting to reiterate that today. And, I was coming in and someone had said, it's really great to see this bipartisan collaboration across the island, different counties and towns and cities, working together to talk about this Anchorage proposal. And, it's easy to do because the good thing is we all work together anyway, regardless of political affiliation. And I dare say that the Hudson River is not a partisan issue. It's a community issue. It's an issue of life for us. And I'm reading a book. I mean, it's so ironic. I'm reading a book that was written by Fran Dunwell, who actually, her family grew up in the same neighborhood that I did. And the book's back from the 90s. And it really had to do with the fight over Storm King Mountain pump station. And it's called Hudson River Highlands. And there's a passage in that book that talks about a bipartisan piece of legislation that was written in 1967
York State Senate, his first year in the New York State Senate, and then Assemblyman Maurice Hitchens. So this bipartisanship was one of the first bipartisan, or I should say comprehensive, pieces of legislation that came out of Albany as a result of what they tried to do down here. So we've been moving forward for a long time, and we've got to stay, exactly as we have been, and we're only going to get stronger. And so, on behalf of the City of Poughkeepsie, and also the Town of Lloyd, where my friend Paul Hansut is the supervisor, where they get their drinking water from, and the Town of Poughkeepsie, where Jay Baisley is now the acting supervisor, the Town of Poughkeepsie and the City of Poughkeepsie run a joint water plant, and it's called the Poughkeepsie Joint Water Board. So I'm representing them as well. We recently weighed in as a board, sent a letter to the Coast Guard opposing these anchorages for all the reasons that's been spoken about so far today. 80,000 plus people get their water from our joint water, and the number is probably closer to 100,000 when you factor in the hospitals and the colleges and the water that gets down the Central Dutchess transmission line, down in East Fishkill with local boundaries. So water is what we live from. Water is also the economic engine that is going to drive smart growth, good growth, having people coming into the community that have safe drinking water. What we see in Dutchess County, and Mark Molinaro would say this if he was standing here today, is that a centralized water system county-wide using Hudson River water makes the most economic sense. We see the ability to expand that capability and to help growth in a positive way. Because again, water is the most important thing. Now, 80,000 plus people, we have a fuel spill or some type of environmental issue that prohibits us from taking water from the Hudson River. We have a very limited supply. And once that supply is done, we have no more water. No more water for people, no more water for fire hydrants, no more water for flushing toilets. We have a disaster on our hands that I don't know exactly standing here today, but people who know a lot more about this than I do, how we would address that. So we need to be vigilant, and we need to be, again, as a group of people saying to the Coast Guard, hold on, let's have these discussions. And I really am really good to hear, the first part is really laying out where this is coming from, how is it happening, who's advocating for it, what are the reasons really behind it. But we need to stand, united together as a group. And I really, I always have to, give kudos to Assemblyman Skartados. We've been together a few times this week already at a ward meeting, at a meeting in my office where Frank has said, okay, how can I help? What can we do? And he is helping the City of Poughkeepsie in all these communities along the Hudson, because as he said, he's the only state representative, I believe, at least in the Assembly, that each community he represents is on the Hudson River. So what a better advocate and a better spot to lead this discussion, Frank, and to lead this opposition to having these anchorages, which are going to be able to have the possibility of causing great environmental problems, but that leads to economic problems. We've made a lot of progress in this river. And I started out hanging out on the river as a kid, and I'm still hanging. I took 2 pictures this morning from Warriors Park. I did this Good Morning Poughkeepsie, and that's where it came from. So now I'm here to say I stand with you. The Joint Water Board stands with you. Jay Baisley stands with you. So does Paul Hansut. That we will work together to oppose these anchorages and tell the Coast Guard someplace else, not here. And then thank you, Frank, and thank you for all being here. Really helping me too.
Thank you so much, Rob Rolison. I appreciate your comments. And, as you've heard, this river is not only our history, our heritage, but also our future. And I think we should all work together to ensure that it works for us and that it will be here for future generations to come. So I want to thank every single one of you for being here today. I know some of you had better things to do perhaps, but I'm glad you are here, and I appreciate the remarks. Obviously, this is only the beginning. We will continue to fight to ensure that these barges do not land on our shores. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Thank you so much.